Good evening, everybody. Welcome out to Fort Scott National Historic Site. We're commemorating the third year of the Civil War sesquicentennial this year at our Civil War encampment. 1863 was a pivotal year for the Civil War. It was a turning point, largely due to the battles of Gettysburg and Vicksburg down in Mississippi, both happening at the same time. Here at Fort Scott saw a lot of guerrilla activity in 1863. Cointreau was active. There was a massacre down at Baxter Springs that several Fort Scott troops were involved in. And many of you from this area probably heard of the sack on Lawrence and the subsequent Order Number 11 that was issued. Fort Scott responded to the sack on Lawrence by building more defensive structures. Three lunettes, as they were called, were established around the perimeter of Fort Scott in 1863. The reconstruction of one of those is out on the School's Plaza. Fort Scott also saw the recruitment of African American troops in 1863. 2 units were mustered in here that year. First Kansas Colored was mustered in to federal service here on the grounds of Fort Scott in January of 1863, and the second Kansas Colored was organized in this area in August of 1863. Tonight we're going to present a form of entertainment called the Tableau that will focus on events that happened at Fort Scott in 1863. 2 of our volunteers, Susan and Abby Anderson, putting this together for us, so we're very grateful for that. I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over now to one of my fellow park rangers, Robert Thomas, and he's going to introduce the Tableau.
Good evening, everyone. I too want to welcome you here to the Fort Scott National Historic Site. What we're going to show you this evening is a little bit of Victorian entertainment. This was a very popular form of entertainment back then. One of the reasons it was rather easy to do, it's called the Tableau-Vivant, or living picture. And often what they would do is show you scenes from history, things like maybe the Washington crossing the Delaware or something like that. Also very popular paintings of the time would be displayed. As I said, this was very simple to do for people of all echelons of society and was very popular. So with that going on, I will say enjoy the show, folks.
Came to town, the economy did well. The streets became crowded, and the businessmen came to sell. Saloons and billiards sprouted up overnight. Drinking and gambling, boy, is mother uptight.
And so when the soldiers came to town, Fort Scott became the commercial center of the region. C.M. Chase, who visited the town in August of 1863, wrote a letter saying the following: "But as the war broke out, it was filled with soldiers, and all the southwestern government business was transacted here. Businessmen began to move in and build adjoining to the fort until it became the largest town in southern Kansas, numbering between 1,000 and 2,000 permanent residents and about the same transient residents. Good buildings are going up in every part of the town. The streets are constantly crowded with people, and everything presents an air of life, enterprise, and progress. So you can imagine the change that these early settlers of Fort Scott experienced. It was a good change, giving many people an opportunity to start anew in life.
Matt, move in a little bit. But I don't have to pan so far to get you. Good.
January 13th, the first colored Kansas was mustered in. Their time as part of the Union was just about to begin. But experience was well on the rise, having conquered a battle nearly twice their size. Facing danger and merciless hate, these brave men marched on despite their fate.
The 1st Kansas Colored Infantry was recruited by the popular and fanatical abolitionist Jim Lane in August of 1862. Many of the soldiers were fugitives, meaning that they had escaped slavery, possibly leaving behind friends and family. And I ask you to think how you would feel if you had the opportunity to fight for the freedom of your loved ones. It was a common opinion at the times that these men would not be good soldiers, but that was swiftly disproved at the Battle of Island Mound in October of 1862, when though outnumbered, they defeated their enemy. Consequently, these soldiers faced brutal and demeaning actions from both the Union and the Southern sides. But despite that, these brave men fought with honor, courage, and valor.
Homeless and helpless, where the people came, refugees they are called, but people all the same. Sick and starving, young and old, mothers and children and infants were cold. They had with them nothing, not a blanket to keep warm, and many would die. They were not out of harm. Assistance was needed, supplies desperate too. Ladies of the town, what can you do?
The refugees came to Fort Scott for protection and for assistance. Many were Native Americans, but anyone who was a Union sympathizer might have been forced to leave their homes by the threat or the fear of their family's well-being. Some accounts say that there were between 50 to 100 new refugees arriving here in Fort Scott daily. It was a struggle for supplies coming from St. Louis to meet the demand, and many times the refugees relied upon the compassion and the charity of the citizens of Fort Scott.
General Blunt on his way to Fort Gibson. Clerk and bandsman traveled with him. When ahead they saw some men wearing blue, they thought it an honor guard to protect them through. But a shot rang out that meant to kill. That was no honor guard. That is Quantrell. General Blunt escaped to Quantrell's remorse by the help of one mighty fast horse. Scattered through the prairies, great was their loss. 79 of 100 clerks and bandmen were lost.
General Blunt experienced a great loss by the infamous William Cantrell in October of 1863 near Baxter Springs. Though General Blunt, his clerks and musicians were protected by a small escort, instead of waiting for General Blunt's command, the entire escort had broken at the first fire of the enemy and were flying in disorder across the prairie. General Blunt's reputation was lost at this time, but fortunately for him, in 1864, he was able to regain that good reputation for us.
With war comes tragedy, killing, and hate. The looming terror and sadness so great. Families were torn in more ways than one. Everything lost. How much can we handle? What makes us strong? Where is the joy and peace that we long? Though I don't see it, need I despair? I feel certain truths will always be there.
Progress, courage, passion, humility. The Civil War was a turning point for the entire nation, and by sharing its history, we can continue to pass these lessons down to future generations. Ladies and gentlemen, this does conclude our program. Thank you for joining us today. Let's give them all a big round of applause. Thank you, and I would like to bring out two people, Susan and Abigail Anderson, if you would come out. These were the two ladies who wrote this tableau for us this evening. Come on, don't be shy. Now, if I could have everybody that participated, come on out. You recognize what you've done.
Huzzah! Hip hip huzzah!
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this evening's program.
Come on, Nick.